Our country has a serious problem that goes far beyond the political war that's amongst us today. I'm talking about the opioid epidemic. This war is in our own homes. According to an article written in RehabSpot, an average of 115 Americans die each day from an opioid-related overdose. And about 2.1 million Americans are just reported to be addicted to opioids. Opioids are now synthetic and are much more fatal than they have ever been before. These go by the names of fentanyl or carfentanil. And just one little tiny grain of this synthetic drug is enough to kill you. Some in the medical world are referring to this opioid epidemic as the first, second, and third wave. So first we're going to take a look at what opioids are. Where do opioids come from? Opioids are drugs that were made to have our opioid receptors in the brain react whenever they are consumed. So they're used to treat and fight pain, and they kind of make these sensors in our brain go off and make us feel good and feel happy. So the first known opioid use dates back to ancient times, and opioids are derived from poppy plants. They were used in ancient times for much more than the management of pain. Kind of goes back to Hinduism and Buddhism, but we'll go into that in a different time. So doctors and scientists really created medicines such as codeine and morphine to use and fight and treat pain. In today's world, it's much cheaper to make semi-synthetic and synthetic opioids such as carfentanil because it can be derived from just the smallest amount of poppy. So it's much cheaper and you don't have to use as much of the poppy to make it. You can make a lot more of it. So they can make a lot more money. Just the smallest amount of this drug used is enough to be fatal. The number of opioid-related overdoses is skyrocketing each year. Here's some of the latest statistics. In 2016, an average of 170,000 Americans used heroin for the first time. It's kind of a proven fact that heroin addicts most of the time start their addiction with an addiction to doctor-prescribed painkillers. So once that prescription is no longer accessible, they resort to heroin because it's cheaper and it's easier for them to obtain. They don't have to go through withdrawals and get sick. About 40% of the opioid overdoses each year are from prescription opioids. So they were prescribed them from a doctor. Nearly 70% of the 67,367 deaths in 2018 involved an opioid. Non-prescription, prescription, it doesn't matter. It was still an opioid involved. So lastly, we're going to take a look at the three waves in the epidemic. The first wave took place in the 1990s, really with a drug called Oxycontin. Pharmaceutical companies claimed that this drug was very non-addictive. And within 15 years, almost 240 million Americans have been prescribed high doses of painkillers. We're talking 30 milligrams or more of Oxycontin or Roxyset. It's kind of in the same family. The second wave began in 2010 with the number of heroin-related deaths climbing and prescription painkiller deaths rising as well. The third wave began about 3 years later and was much worse than the second. This introduced the synthetic drugs fentanyl and carfentanil. These synthetic drugs are now added to other drugs like Xanax and marijuana. That's proven as well. The rate of opioid deaths was 5 times higher in 2018 than it was in 1999. The opioid epidemic can be treated and can get better if the addict is willing to get help. I know this is an informative speech and we need to state facts, but I'm a recovering addict. This is factual in my own life. The only solution that worked for me was to get clean. A mindset to become willing to get clean and a 12-step rehabilitation program. This was just for me. There are other solutions to this problem other than fatality. Methadone and Suboxone are alternatives that have helped many people fight their addiction to opioids. Opioid withdrawal can be extremely dangerous. If you know someone who wants help, thinks it's a good idea to quit on their own, please refer them to a medical professional who can detox them properly. Thank you.